The New World is done by Terrence Malick, who's a very esoteric director, especially in terms of his music, and he's never used what anyone could consider a traditional score until The New World. What was it like working with the director who had such a unique approach to film music?
I would sum up Terry as being a brilliant photographer, and that's where it stops. The images in The New World are stunning. A Thin Red Line are stunning. In Thin Red Line, he was surrounded by three or four people, a wonderful editor, a wonderful sound effects person who guided him through the dubbing, and a couple of other people. And on The New World, they were not employed. And Terry shot The New World. And the whole idea of The New World was going to be a love story between John Smith and Pocahontas. And there is no reason in the world why it couldn't have been as great a love story as Titanic was. And that was the premise he got hired on. And that is the premise he promised everybody he was going to deliver. So he was out shooting this movie and went overtime in shooting the movie, and he got beautiful images, and everybody, oh, God, this is so beautiful. And there were a couple of things that were pasted together by a couple of the experienced editors of the love scenes and how tasteful it was. Oh, it was going to be great. It was going to be absolutely great. Okay. He had 8 editors working for him, 2 prestigious, the rest out of the woodwork, and some assistants. But there were 8 editors. There was so much film. He was working at night, all night. There was a crew, and all day there was a crew. And when I first saw it, it was a mishmash of unrelated scenes, complete mishmash. And I said, well, Terry, you need to... He asked me what I thought, and I said, well, you need to coalesce this. I mean, this scene should be there. I mean, all kinds of editing things were wrong. And it was his first assembly. And he's a very, very nice man. And that was like in April or May. April. And he was supposed to have a cut ready by May to look at. And that we missed. He missed his deadline. And it was in the middle of June we saw it. Studio saw it. And it was the same thing that I saw 2 days after he finished shooting. It was a mishmash. It had gone through 2.5 months' work, and it was just the same state as when I first saw it. And red flags start to go up everywhere because I'm getting close to my recording dates, and this is unscorable like this. He also knew what the music was. I played him themes. I played him everything on the piano. And he knew, but I had the feeling he didn't really know what movie music was. He didn't have any experience with real film music being presented to him. Even in Thin Red Line, it was all cut up. Well, here I was writing music for him, which he would say was beautiful and great and sounded great on the piano or whatever. But I knew, and I warned everybody, this man does not have a clue what to do with movie music or how it works. Not a clue. He is going to hear his first cue and not know what to do with it. And I warned everybody, and I begged him to watch several movies that had music in them very effectively, be it One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, or, I showed him all kinds of films, or asked him to see all kinds of films that had scores in them. And he said he would, but he never did. And slowly the editorial team started to disintegrate. The good editors left. They brought in more assistants, and it was cut by a bunch of incompetents. There was no real editor. And he continued on in that way, asking for opinions. And we were approaching recording, and there were no scenes to record. There were no scenes to time. He had no structure, literally no structure. Scene A, that should go to scene B to C to D, a natural progression. He had it attached to scene Z, and that was attached to scene X, and that was attached to scene D. I mean, there was no way to score it. So what I did with the film company's permission is I made sequences for myself. I had my music editors assemble sequences as though I thought they should be or that they would normally be. And we scored some of that. And it was lovely. It was just what everybody had hoped would be intended by the film. And Terry saw it and immediately took it back to his editing room and cut it apart and cut the music up, and we were still recording. And I realized it was a waste of everybody's money to keep recording. But we were committed because we had hired the orchestra. So Terry was making this movie that was incomprehensible. Everybody told him it was unwatchable. Everybody. And he had final cut. And when a director has final cut, everybody can scream and shout, but unless you're willing to really go head-to-head in combat, you basically have to throw up your hands and say, I have no control of this man, and if we get the reputation of taking a director's cut film from a director and recutting it ourselves and releasing it, no one will want to make movies with us. So the studio company let him go along. He never did preview it, but he would play it for the studio, and there were 35 people who would come to the screenings, and slowly over the course of 3 hours, because it was a 3-hour movie, they'd walk out. The film company's own employees would walk out of the film. And the editor who had worked on Thin Red Line begged Terry to fix the film. And it was a love story, and Terry doesn't feel those feelings. All I can say is Terry is like on the surface, a stone. And he does not know how to tell a love story to save his life. And it is what ended up being, when we scored the movie, he completely disassembled everything. The score made no sense anymore, and he started to stick in Wagner over scenes that, it was so preposterous. And a Mozart piano concerto over an Indian attack. Everybody, to a man, thought he was insane. By this time, I was no longer on. I just said, basically, fuck you. So I just did say a 4-letter word. I said, I'm out of here. And I had done my score. I thought what I had done was exactly what my brief was, being hired, exactly what the studio wanted, and exactly what the film was supposed to be. And the one who broke the bond was Terry. From the day he started editing to the final day when they forcibly kicked him off the dubbing stage because he was just spending hour after hour doing nothing. It was like shuffling the tiles in a Rubik's Cube. There was never a solution. All he would do is shuffle scene D over to scene X or scene Y, and Y would go up to A. Now let's try putting A after D and putting D behind J. That's good. It was just like there was nobody running the ship, and there was nobody with any gift telling the movie. Terry doesn't do this. And it's something we all learned about the great Terry. And I've never felt so let down by a filmmaker in my life.
Well, I think as a listening experience, it certainly is no letdown.
Well, the CD is as I intended. I said to myself, because very often I was asked, I say to myself, this isn't worth it. I want to resign. I mean, I'll get my money anyway, so to speak. But I don't care about the money. I want to do what's needed in the film and make a wonderful film. And I kept telling Terry, this doesn't have any emotion in it. Don't you understand? And he'd look at it, And he would say, I don't know if emotion is important here. And the whole movie goes by without you knowing that this girl is even called Pocahontas. I don't even know if people notice that. No one ever uses the word Pocahontas in the movie. And I said, Terry, this is the name of the girl. She got this name of Rebecca when she wandered into the English fort, and nobody knew what her real Indian name was. And that was the name of this woman up through the end of the movie. You never knew she was Pocahontas. There was never really a love story. It was only alluded to. It was a complete mishmash. And what was released, what was so amazing, is $50 million later, what was released in the cinema was the exact version of the movie I saw when it was first assembled. The only thing different was they had spent $40 million in between editing, moving the Rubik's Cube, and out came the other end, the same movie. And all the important people had resigned and said, Terry, you're out of your mind. And that's the story of the New World. It was the most disappointing experience I've ever had with a man, because he not only, it wasn't that he threw out my score, he loved my score. He didn't have a clue what to do with it. He didn't have a clue how to use music. So what he started to do was, as I said, take classical pieces, but not even pieces that were transparent and lovely. He was taking Wagner, like a thick, thick blanket or rug, and putting it on his movie. And I swear to God, on the dubbing stage, everybody thought he was joking when he would bring up these musical solutions and take out the score and put in the Wagner, or take out the score there and put in the Mozart. And the CD is what I wrote for the movie, and it makes a lovely CD, but it's the weirdest experience because he loved all the music, but he had not a clue. It's not like he fired me and I'm bitter. What happened was, I'm bitter because he did not make the movie he promised everybody he would make. Not everybody felt betrayed, from the film company down to the editors. Everybody felt betrayed. And this is a man who took the story that could have been one of the great love stories, and was one of the great love stories of history, and turned it into crap. And it's because he doesn't believe in those things, he doesn't understand them, and most importantly, he has not an emotion in his body. He's emotionless. He looks at a scene, and it breaks everybody's heart, and there are 15 people in the room crying. When we scored a scene, the orchestra came in because it looks so beautiful. His photography is so stunning. And it was a scene that we had put together for scoring. It wasn't Terry's cut. It was more or less James Horner's and his music editor's cut, so that we could have a structure to score to. Otherwise, it was just scoring to black film, because there was no film to record to. And it was a 15-minute sequence, and literally, there were like 80 people. We played it like 2 or 3 times. He was in the room, all crying, all saying how moving it was, how brilliant it was. Not the music, but the scene. They thought that the picture was so beautiful, and the story, and everybody was so excited. And I thought, surely that would show Terry that he was on the wrong track. And the primary editor, Richard Chew, etc., were there. And it was so clear what people longed for in the movie that the music brought out. But that's not the movie Terry had in mind. And he saw the reaction, and he took that whole scene and, of course, tore it apart and put it back into the Rubik's Cube stage. And the whole thing was deconstructed and unwatchable again.